So this is the first week of the 30-day challenge. And we are running 30-day challenge on different topics. So this is our very first one. So welcome to the first 30-day challenge. And what better topic than data career path? And we've got Carl, one of the experts in the recruitment space in the data. We've got a few other professional in the recruitment space as well in our community, which is great to have you all part of the community and have your insights from a different point of view in terms of how we usually kind of talk about the operation side of it and how you can do the data analysis and data science. But it's also nice to have that insight from sort of a third party, if it makes sense, from outside, that someone actually hiring and positioning and finding the right talent for organization. And having some insight from you, Carl, that what are the things that different organization and companies are looking for to see in their suitable candidate, and how we can sort of empower our members and community to the point that they know what's their career path in next few years, what are the skills that they need to learn, whether it's soft skill or technical skill. And I'm sure you've got a lot to share in that space, Carl. And then we sort of take this journey through the next 4 weeks. So every week we try to have a few panelists and just get the community to shoot all the questions to our panelists. And I try to ask as many of them as possibly I can from in this session from Carl and Sean. And in the future ones, our other panelists as well. So a little bit about the what is Analytics Roundtable. So we exist to drive the positive evolution of data profession by facilitating the environment, as hopefully everyone getting the sort of a hint of it, the environment that is for the best data professionals to share and learn from one another. So it's a great sort of a collaboration environment. It's a safe environment. You can make mistakes. You can ask questions without being judged or feeling like you have to kind of prove yourself. So you have that safe environment to be able to grow, learn, and achieve and be the best version of yourself. We also this is a space is data focused. So it, as we said, it's an ask and answer platform. So feel free to, at any point, jump into the different topics, groups, follow the topics that you are interested. So if you follow them, if there is any new post or update, you can actually get notification on them. And also feel free to post any questions and get the sort of a conversation going. And that's how we all learn from that. Now, a little bit about the 30-day challenge. So the 30-day challenge usually runs over 4 weeks. We may not necessarily have 4 live sessions, but we have 4 weeks that we try to achieve something on steroid, if it makes sense. So it's like a very intense engagement that everyone kind of put their power together, and whatever is the topic, we try to focus and learn as much as we can on the topic. So on the topic of the career path and the data career, this week we are focusing on different career paths in the data. And it's very interesting that we've got such a diverse community, already people coming and members coming from a different sort of a background into the data, or they even started from a data analytics or a data scientist degree and sort of moved on into their career. So let's see what are the different paths in the data career. And this is a little sort of a visual to kind of get you thinking that this is the advice from an algorithm, and this is from a financial services. So I couldn't help myself to throw something from finance to just maybe show the sort of the opportunities that are available to the data professionals, that it can be in any industry, it can be in any level. So this is an advice on the left-hand side that can get from an algorithm, very nice and easy and simple and a straight line. And this is the real life, when you actually go around a circle to finally get to the point and see how you can actually achieve something. So with saying that, what we're trying to kind of say is the role of a data scientist and a data professional can be simplifying complex content and to be able to bring some insight. Now, that insight doesn't necessarily have to be technical. In any business, and I'm sure Carl can step in later on in the Q&A and sort of confirm that in organizations and in businesses, they want insight that it can drive the business success. And ultimately, it can whether it's a big company with shareholders, it can actually bring return on the shareholders and a new investment, or bring revenue, or it might be a learning and development or L&D, and it might be some sort of a um, um, research that they are facilitating, and we want to get some outcome. For example, the vaccine for the COVID. I'm sure there is a lot of data science and data professional behind the scene are doing some sort of a modeling and see which one it's going to be the most effective one. So Sean, I think it would be great to have your insight on this slide. So these are the various data career paths that ultimately, in a sort of a bigger picture, it focuses on three main areas or domains. One is all about automation, which covers various roles. So, for example, data engineers and big data engineers. Then we have the validity. So we have the data professionals that actually validate the data, and we also have the the intuition domain that has the largest variety and cover various roles. So as you can see, there are a lot of overlaps, and hence we had that question in the 30-day challenge, that are you a data scientist or a data engineer? So in each of those roles in the data professional space, there are some overlaps. And how do you differentiate your role, and how can you actually excel in your role? Sean, I may let you kind of lead in this slide, because it looks very complex, and it needs the brain of a data scientist to simplify it.
So I think, Carl, you've probably seen a lot of these position titles, and you've probably connected a few people with some of them. But I think the slide previous to this is that there's perhaps a lot of uncertainty around what someone does in data and analytics. And in terms of like an executive saying, let's just hire some data analysts, crunch some numbers together and find the insights, that's generally not that practical. And so I see it evolving, and it has started to already, into a profession. So data and analytics as a profession is quite foundational to driving success. And that's why sort of in the real life, there was a recent McKinsey study where I think the vast majority, 60% of analytical projects tended to fail because you're not really connecting the right individuals together. And so I think this slide is quite good. It highlights three aspects towards successful data analytics teams. It's the foundational elements, storing the data correctly, looking at the frequency and the accuracy of that information. And there's a lot of manual work associated with that. So key to creating value is looking at how you can automate that, and getting software engineers, and the title is sort of around data engineers, which is a fairly new concept. Bringing them together to help understand the business requirements and start to get the data flows in, so you can start to create the intelligence, is quite key. And you've sort of listed the traditional and phasing out roles. Big data, I think, is starting to get phased out. I don't think it's necessarily that trendy. The reasons for that is you've got tools like Snowflake, which handles a lot of the automation associated with the DBA in managing quite sophisticated architecture. Those environments can scale up and down automatically. So the focus is more on the versatility of a data engineer in looking at the variety of structured, unstructured, and structured data sources, how you could connect 100 plus different sources of information in a reliable way, and how you can meet the demands for the business with greater frequency. That's 1/3 of it. The other aspects to successful data and analytics is around sort of an aspect around validity. So bringing in your statistics, your mathematics individuals, your data analysis. There might be behavioral analysts as well. it's some of the more statistical elements associated, perhaps slightly more hacking as well, and being able to test different ideas. And then the last area, which is really important, is domain expertise. So that covers a variety of things. Your data stewards, solution architects, data governance analysts, change managers. I had a project recently where we're looking at building the foundations, so getting data engineers involved, looking at particular BI products. But then we realized the business didn't actually know what we're talking about. So we had a need to look at change management resources as well, to look at how we improve data literacy, how we explained really technical concepts to the business so that they could understand it. So the career path for data is actually quite wide and varied. It involves quite technical skills. It involves talking to people with functional skill sets that might look at data quality, aspects of change management, project management, and then combining that with your data science sort of experience, individuals with mathematics, statistics, looking at how you can provide recommendations from the sort of ever complex modeling techniques. You can get into sort of deep learning and machine learning, and looking at natural language within that as well. So the variety of use cases, I think, is increasing. There is a need for stability in platforms, and there's also a business translation element as well. And I think it goes to the next slide that you have, Freya, that I think it's a future slide actually, but you can't actually find an individual with all those skill sets. I think you need to be able to build a team with a variety of different individuals. So for me, that's quite exciting because I bring in different unique perspectives. I don't necessarily know everything, and I can sort of fit within a team and play a unique role to contributing towards that team's success. So I think it's really identifying early, and if you resonate with that, with the candidates that you manage, Carl, identifying early what sort of career aspiration an individual has, and then looking at the types of roles or requirements that you have to be able to fit that individual as well.
It's interesting, Sean. I think in terms of the entry pathways, we've got a list of sort of different platforms and online courses and online learning platforms that we can access. And from my sort of my first-hand experience is from someone that is a non-English speaking background coming. I did my bachelor in mathematics, but then when you actually start learning that context in English, these sort of resources are very valuable and helpful to just, you already know the content, you already know the material, but it just helps you to kind of put it in a context of almost like culturally, sync it with the environment that you are in, so you can actually present yourself better. So I think it's great for great opportunity nowadays that there are so many different learning platforms, online platforms, and a lot of free ones that you can just join in, sit on a course. And Carl, I'm very keen to hear your insight, but I think it's actually valuable when you are evaluating a candidate and you're kind of going through the shortlisting. You see someone has that thirst and enthusiasm for learning and education, and if you see not necessarily collecting certificates here and there, but if you see someone actually participating in different type of courses, you can see that this candidate or this data professional is keen to learn more and challenge themselves. So I'm assuming that it should be something positive to kind of look for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we're looking at our candidates, obviously you're looking for that experience, but one of the first things we look for is that educational background, that experience doing courses within their kind of subject matter. And yeah, there's so many out there. I think I was just speaking to a candidate today. I think he's got about 20 years experience, but he keeps on improving himself. He keeps on doing these courses. And I think he listed about 20 different kind of data courses that he's done in the last kind of 4 or 5 years, all within kind of the new cloud areas, because he started out when cloud wasn't really a thing. It was all kind of on-site kind of data warehouses, and yeah, he's just continued to kind of show his enthusiasm, and that is through kind of studying those courses. And as you say, there's lots of them out there at the moment that are free. There are some very good ones that do cost a bit of money, but sometimes they're worth it. But as you say, to get started, while you're trying to find what areas you're looking for, I think it's worth getting on some of those free ones, work out which technology you've got a bit of a interest in, and kind of what career avenue you'd like to take, and then you can maybe invest in a more expensive one.
I think, Carl, for our members, we will cover in our future sessions that, the CVs and how to actually present your, skill. But I think sometimes when you are, if you're someone like me that love, learning and education, sometimes you kind of run out of the pages on your CV, and that can actually be challenging. That how can you be precise and concise, and you're still presenting yourself in a way that doing justice to all your skill and the education and the experience that you have, but also not overwhelming, the kind of hiring manager that what's going on here. So I think we will cover that. And I also another thing that we get a lot of question is from international students trying to get a role or a job, or someone like myself from a non-English speaking background coming and trying to get a job. I remember over now 12 years ago, when I wanted to get my first job, it was that kind of chicken and egg thing that you had to have a local experience to get a job, but you can't get a local experience because you don't have a job. So I'm sure a lot of people in our community, and Dilip, you're kind of having a little bit of a smile, and I guess that's kind of like resonating with a lot of people, that how can I get that job without going crazy? So Carl, that's why we've got you here. And until we get that response, we're not going to let you go.
No, understood. And look, I appreciate it. It can be difficult. And a lot of the time we're tasked to find people, and our clients say, look, we need that local experience. And I understand the frustrations when I'm speaking to candidates about this subject. And I think my advice to most people when it comes to that education piece, that background, that experience is important, and it's important to show that on your CV. What you can also do is look at things like GitHub. Let's say you're looking at that kind of visualization side of things, so you're on that data analysis side, and you're working with Tableau or Power BI. You really can kind of get these things onto your GitHubs, and you can show examples of your work. I think being able to show examples of your work really does help when it comes to trying to find a new role. I know we kind of had a role recently we've been working on, and I think maybe a candidate might have been a bit of a 50-50, but then we could show them the examples of work that he's done through images from some of his machine learning work in the past, and he was then taken through to interview, and he performed fairly well. So it's one of those, I think if you can show examples of your work, it just gives people a bit more confidence in your ability going forward.
Yeah, thanks. Sean, did you want to add something to that?
No, I think the types of CVs that come through, and I think there's a future discussion on it, but it really shows the enthusiasm of the candidate too. So especially if someone's had 30 plus years experience, you may not think, or you might have some unconscious bias around that individual, but you start to see their CV and maybe some real examples. Maybe they have a computer screen, they've got a photo of them posing with the 2 thumbs up. It sort of shows how keen that individual in this type of industry, and that really makes them stand out, I think, rather than just sort of reading a CV, which might be a few dot points. So you always look at GitHub, definitely. Data science might also be Kaggle. So what is their ranking? Are they in the top 1%? Which might be very hard, they might be very attractive. But did they actually get into sort of an upper quartile result, or you can actually see their code and the methodology that they went through as well. So I guess employers are constantly doing their own research about a candidate to ensure that they are the right fit. And I think that's probably more the case for, I think, government organizations as well, where it can be, I think it's even more crucial to make that right hiring decision. And you look at every possible evidence, which might be stuff beyond the resume, to make that final decision. And In some cases, that might actually bring a candidate up if they've performed poorly in an interview as well.
Thanks, Sean. That's great. I'm going to get back to the sharing a screen for just few more sort of slides that hopefully are helpful. So just double checking that, see the screen, okay? So this one, in this kind of slide, I want to talk about that how these kind of resources that we just talked about it align with the typical process. So in practice, sort of how different type of data roles can kind of come together to help a business to actually achieve their goals and objectives, because ultimately all the roles are working together and shouldn't be kind of clashing, and it should be in a sort of a teamwork and collaborative environment that they are actually helping each other to be able to achieve the business and the company's goals and objectives. So start on the top side, that which is a business understanding. That's the very first thing. And sometimes from a business side, which I come from mainly, is you may get the professionals and technical coming to a project and very enthusiastically want to achieve a lot of things, and sometimes it's actually because they know a lot and they are geniuses that coming and want to solve the problem. But sometimes it's actually worthwhile that kind of take a step back and listen to the business and see what are their actually problems, and sometimes maybe help them to understand their problem. Do they actually know what they're trying to achieve here? And then based on that business understanding, then build up different sort of a data sets and collection, and that's when the start of the kind of process sort of kick off, and then you start kind of getting into knowing different center of influence with that business, so who actually you have to go to be able to get the correct data. We had that conversation in our luncheon event, that a sort of a data model is as good as the quality of the data. So there is a kind of old saying, garbage in, garbage out. So how can you actually find the right people within that business? And I think how this tie back into the career path is, do you actually see yourself as someone who is engaging? Do you have that kind of client engagement skill? Can you actually go and sit in a room and get everyone thinking about their problem, how they can actually express their business unit, how they can talk about their process? So part of the process mapping, and it comes from my time when I was doing a business analysis, that you go to some sort of a different organization, and sometimes there are a little bit of a rivalry happening, between HR and payroll and this and that. So what's your, what sort of a skill do you have to be able to sit in that room, that not everyone, they're best friends and they're not going to go and have a drink at the end of the day, but your role is to be able to sit there professionally and respectfully and with a lot of knowledge and experience, and bring everyone together to be able to understand what is the bottom line, what is the main problem here, and how I can actually present the right skill set here. So do I need to tap into my soft skill? Do I need to maybe just present something insightful that get them engaged and get them excited? So I think it's something that maybe sometimes it gets a little bit underrated, that when you go to an interview, you might focus on the technical side so much that you may not necessarily be able to actually present yourself the right way. And Dilip, I don't want to kind of put the spotlight on you, but feel free to kind of jump in and ask any question. This is your opportunity to, you've got a recruiter and a hiring manager both here, so you can present yourself however you want. Yeah. I think it's actually know from, your point of view that, do you feel that pressure that sometimes, when someone goes to an interview, they may think that I need to actually, prove that I know all, most of this technical knowledge, that sometimes we forget about that softer skill, that client engagement, more of like a project management type of thing. What are your thoughts, Carl, on that?
Some of the interviewers.
Dilip, please.
Oh, sorry.
No, Dilip, please. I would love to hear your insight on that.
Okay, so when I go for interviews, sometimes it is like you prepare very well for your technical side, and then when the interview starts, it is more of a soft skill interview. So it all depends on your previous experiences, what they are asked, so that you get to know like actually that person has worked well, whether he was involved in the project fully or not. And some interviews is more of technical.
Yep,
And
that's right.
only another thing which I find when you go for some openings which are there in Seek or LinkedIn, so I always get confused. Like there is some openings are like more of Power BI and Python, and some are with Tableau. So you might not be an expert in all. So I just wanted to know what is the current trend, or what is the tools which are in more demand in the market.
Sure. I think that's a good segue to our next kind of few slides, which is the Q&A with Carl and Sean. So I'm going to reserve that question. So the question was, what are the sort of a trending, technical skill that would be beneficial for you to know and maybe highlight that in your resume or in your interview? Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, great. Okay, so kind of moving on in this process, then the next part is data acquisition and understanding. So now we engage the business. We know what's the problem now. We actually need to go and find the relevant data. So the data sources, the pipelines, building different sort of a data set. So sometimes you get this big, Excel or CSV extract file, and you are like, what's what? And it goes column after column and then row after row. So the first thing is actually kind of tidy up and categorize and get to the data that you want, and anything unnecessarily kind of filter it out. So that's also a very relevant skill, and I think that's also valuable to be able to present it in any interview. And then it comes to the modeling. Now you talk to the business, you know what's the problem, you collected data, now you want to go back to them and say, this is what I understand it's happening, and this is how potentially you can solve your problem. So I think the key thing in this slide is that life cycle. So it goes around and you need to constantly engaging the business. Sometimes the problem comes from someone being in sort of a silo and just not necessarily talking to the business and come out from their cave and say, hey, I solved the problem. But by then the business has moved on and they've gone to something totally different. So the point in here is, now you know these type of things that are important for businesses. How can you best present yourself? And also, where do you see yourself in this life cycle? Do you see yourself as someone that is very good in client engagement and the business analysis side, and you love and enjoy talking to people, like myself, that I like to talk a lot? But so do you like to actually have a role that is more sort of a social aspect of it, or you are a little bit maybe more kind of reserved and you enjoy your technical skill and you like to be able to produce very valuable, insightful, models, and maybe have minimum sort of an interaction with the business side? So where do you see yourself? And I think that would give you some clarity in terms of your data career. Sean, would you like to add anything on that slide?
Yeah, I guess quickly, you covered it all. And you might be across one or more components. I think when you're going through the interview, sort of get a sense of where the organization need is. I had an interview with a technical BA, and we were focused on the very right, which was around deployment. And he started talking about the process of really good business understanding, then around data acquisition and some partial modeling, but he missed the questions around the need around deployment. So the sub areas there around quality assurance and production checklist and SLAs were key parts to that interview, but it was maybe only covered 10% of the overall answers that the candidate gave back. So I think you could get a sense of where you fit within this process, and when you're applying for a role and during the interview, you can sort of get a feel of where they are in this process too. It might be towards the very end, or it might be somewhere in the middle. I think getting that gauge is important.
Thanks, John. That was a very good point. Very interesting. So moving on, now we are trying to find those unicorns, and I'm sure there are a lot of them in our community. They just need to be...
I think.
Sorry, Sean?
Well, Carl has quite a few of those.
I try.
So here we just try to kind of summarize everything. So what are the different roles that you would see yourself best, perform? What's your unicorn sort of a power and dust? Or if I want to go with my daughter's thing, it's like unicorn dust or rainbow. So what's your sort of a standout skill, or so that's sort of a superpower? What's your superpower? How can you go to an interview and wow them and they say, we have to hire Dilip now? We can't leave this session without that. Sorry, Dilip, I'm just speaking on you a lot, but you get the idea that what's your superpower. So this slide is trying to kind of focus on that when you go, your takeaway from this session is now go back and say, maybe I need to specialize more in one area than the other, or maybe I'm actually interested to be across everything. Maybe I'm more of a hybrid and maybe sort of a bird's eye view. I like that type of role. Or no, I'm very much into detail and I like to just focus on one area and then I'm going to get to the bottom of it and learn everything and anything about it. So with saying that, I'm going to take us to the Q&A. So we had one more panelist who I think got caught up and couldn't make it to today's session, but Brandon is in our community. So feel free to shoot any question to him as well and tag him in the questions here. We've got Carl and Sean. So I guess I start with the very first question that Dilip just asked. What are those sort of a trending technical and maybe also soft skills that you are looking to see in your candidates? Sean, maybe start with you first.
Yeah, sure. And apologies, I will need to duck off to something. But this has been a fantastic presentation and I'm available after, so feel free to ask anyone to ask me any questions. I guess to answer Dilip's question, in terms of BI more general consumption for the majority of organizations, it's generally sort of between Power BI and Tableau. I'm starting to see Power BI becoming more prevalent because you can get an enterprise license for 1/10 of the cost when compared to Tableau. And so here at Macquarie University, we've made that switch. The usage of that tool is fairly straightforward. There's a lot of YouTube videos that really go into that process of creating a dashboard quite effectively. I think part of a data analyst's role is complementing it with a variety of tools. So you might start with Power BI, but then jump into maybe something like a Jupyter Notebook if you have a good sort of Python awareness. Look at Tableau, I think, is another option. You can't go past Excel. I think a lot of initial analysis can be done within that. And then you can expand into other tools to sort of productionize your thinking and make it a bit more robust.
Thanks, John. Okay. And please feel free to duck out anytime. I know you had another meeting coming up, but thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to get to Carl in a second, but I'll just to confirm that the recording of this session will be available in the platform, in the community. So you can go back at any time and just have a look at it. And if you had any further question, please feel free to shoot it to Carl, Sean, myself, and we do our best to answer your questions. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. And what you also highlighted as week 2, differing technology and upskilling, I think is going to be a really good deep dive session around this type of technology. So definitely happy to share more in that.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Sean.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks.
Cheers, Sean. See you.
Carl, over to you. So just hear your insight on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously it depends, kind of going back to the different types of roles that you can be looking at. I guess it depends on what you are looking at in particular. I know you mentioned more kind of the visualization tools over there, kind of Tableau and Power BI. And I know Sean mentioned that Power BI is becoming more prevalent, which is definitely the case. And it's definitely for the reason that it's a lot cheaper. Would you in particular be looking just at that visualization piece, or do you do any kind of the data engineering in the background as well?
Not into the data engineering part. Actually, I am as a business analyst work for the data warehousing and BI part. So I was most interested into getting to the data analysis part. So maybe Excel, SQL, and visualization. So I'm learning Python. I had learned something of hour long back. So that was not. There was a lot of statistics involved. I couldn't grasp most of the things that time. So I'm doing a course going through some Udemy courses. So I was a little bit caught up between whether Python or R which is the best suitable tool to take.
Yeah, no, good, very good question. I think probably 75% of my clients utilize Python over R. So I would say that's probably definitely the better one to go with. And I think if you have that, you do get a lot of transferable experience from it. And yeah, I'd say kind of 75%, maybe even more of my clients look for that Python background when it comes to that area of data. So yeah, and then visualization, as I mentioned, kind of the Tableau and Power BI. I guess you work with ETL tools as well.
Yeah, ETL tools I've worked, I have since I was in a data warehousing business analyst role. My last role was not into data, DWBI. Prior to that, I had worked with Cognos, and as an ETL tool, it was an in-house tool which was made in our product company. So it was not into Informatica or Talent.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the time now, kind of the ETL tools, especially from the cloud-based servers, you usually around that kind of Glue, kind of your Apache, Apache Spark. I think a lot of that is kind of the tools that I would recommend looking into. But yeah, so kind of from what you do, it sounds like the things that I would look at if I was you would be kind of that Python, Power BI, and then yeah, kind of things like Apache Spark and Apache Glue would be the things that I would look at if I was you.
Great.
And regarding this cloud platform coming up very well, like whether Azure, GCP, AWS, and then now Snowflake is coming into place. And what about Alteryx also? Whether you should be looking into all those areas also?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a lot of clients, if you've got one or two of those cloud servers, then it is quite transferable. I think so that I would say kind of GCP is the up and comer at the moment, and then Azure as well and well, AWS is actually one of the more utilized ones as well. So I think yeah, all three of those worth getting experience on if you can. If you've got one or two, a lot of the time it is transferable as well.
Okay. And Snowflake is also coming up very well in Australia.
Yeah, Snowflake is definitely one that you should be looking at.
Okay.
Okay, great. Dilip, do you have any more questions? We've got about 5 minutes, Carl, just to kind of wrap up the session. Before we kind of finish it, I'd just like to thank you, Carl, for making the time. I know you've got a very busy schedule, so I appreciate making time for the community, and I'm sure it's very valuable. And Dilip, I hope that you got some value out of today's session. And it's always good
it was very good, in fact. Yeah.
Thank you. And it's always good to be actually live in the session, because as you can see, you can ask a question straight away and get the answer straight away as well. Carl, would you like to add anything just to kind of sum up the session?
Yeah, sure. I think as we kind of discussed today, there's so many different areas of data that you can look into. I think obviously, Dilip, I know your main focus is within that kind of BA space. I think we the way we work out here is probably about 11, 12 different main topics, and then lots of little different subtopics within those different areas of data. So yeah, really interesting, lots of different areas that you can get into, and obviously different technologies that you can look at for those different types of roles. And I think they're the sort of things we're going to be covering over the next few weeks with the presentations coming up. I know we've got the technology side, and I know we're doing a session at the end where we'll be looking at how you can best market yourself, kind of who you can be networking with, how best to utilize recruiters, because I know we can be sometimes difficult to deal with. So I can kind of give you a bit of insight into how to get the best out of us, and how to look for those good recruiters that will look after you as well. So yeah, lots of good stuff coming up over the next few weeks in the challenge.
That's great. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone also in the community or supporting and making sure you jump into the topics, groups, ask questions, collaborate and get the most out of it. I look forward to our next session, call. It was very interesting, very useful, very insightful. I appreciate your time. And I'm sure everyone's going to get great value out of it.
Thanks, Arya. Thanks you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye. Till next session.
Take care.
Bye. Yeah, till next session.